Documentary filmmaker Nancy Spielberg joined us this week to talk about her new film, Who Will Write Our History? The film is about a hidden archive stashed in the Warsaw Ghetto before the Jews there were killed. Here's Chris Mitchell in Jerusalem with Nancy Spielberg.
Nancy, great to be with you, and thanks for joining us on Jerusalem Dateline.
Love it here.
You did a documentary called Above and Beyond about airmen that helped the Israel during the War of Independence. Why do you think it struck such a chord among many people?
You know, I think that, first of all, it was a big surprise story. You know, even people who knew a lot about the history of Israel or about, you know, the American history didn't know this piece. And I think that was the number one of the wow. And it was also like, why would these World War II vets, they had, you know, finished their tour of duty for the United States, they survived World War II, what possessed them to pick up and go and fight again in another person's war? And I think that's, you know, question perplexed people, and I think that's probably why it grabbed their attention.
And what did possess them?
You know, they saw the survivors coming out of the camps, coming into Israel, which was newly established as a state, and walking into a potential genocide. Israel was attacked on all fronts in 1948 by all the surrounding countries. And I think they felt this was part of their duty from World War II to secure not just the release from the camps, but their you know, tour, their trip home.
And you've showed it here in Israel to members of the IDF. What kind of reaction have you had?
Well, I was really nervous about the Israeli audience because, you know, I am telling their history, but they're really not the stars of this film. It's really, you know, this documentary is really about the Americans. But they were so emotional and very, very grateful. So I think it went over very well. And the commander of the Air Force here in Israel actually would like it to be a part of all the pilots' training courses, that they should know their roots. Yeah.
Speaking of history, you're preparing another documentary about who will write our history. Tell us about that.
Again, Roberta Grossman, who's the director of Above and Beyond, had found this book, Who Will Write Our History, and had bought the movie rights 7 years ago. And that actually, I pulled her away to do Above and Beyond, and the whole time we were filming, she said, but I'm doing that, you've got to hear about this other story, you know, about a group of people that saw the writing on the wall. They knew they would not survive, most likely, the Warsaw Ghetto. And they said, if we do not collect and write our histories, our history will be written by the Germans and we will no longer exist. And they gathered up diaries and they wrote journals and they had children write essays and they had poems and recipes and every aspect of life and death in the Warsaw Ghetto. And then they wrote their last will and testimonies and they buried these in milk cans and tin boxes, literally as the Germans were pounding on the door. And after the war, only 3 people from this secret group survived, and they went back through the rubble and tried to find where was the cellar under all of the rubble. They found 2, one is still buried, and unearthed these documents. And it's incredible because it's like finding 50 Anne Frank diaries, and the world knows Anne Frank, and if the world knew anything of the Holocaust before Schindler's List, it was probably from the diary of Anne Frank.
And there's one other project you're working on. Many people know about Miracle on Ice, but this is the Miracle on Hardwood.
Right.
About the Israeli team playing the Soviet Union.
1977. It's such a great story because it's just Israel.
It is. It's just
That wasn't a camel, but you know, that was cute. It's very cute.
Yeah.
In 1977, Maccabi Tel Aviv basketball team, which was not known to be a great team, took on some American players, Tal Brody, Ossie Perry, and they were getting better and better, and they entered into the World Games, and before you know it, they were up against the Russians, and that was the top team, you know, to beat. And Israel knew that it did not have a shot, but Israel was a very downtrodden country at that point. They were still very, very demoralized from the Yom Kippur War in 1973, and they sort of needed a good boost. And it turned out that they actually won a game against the Soviet Army's team, and when they won, the entire country here, you know, the streets were quiet, everybody watched the game, and Tal Brody, the captain of the team, when they won, he said, "Anachnu ala mapa," we are on the map. Israel's on the map, not just in basketball, but everything. And it's just such a great sports story. It's a David and Goliath story.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
It
it's
is.
a David and Goliath story. At this time in history, in Israel's history, how important do you think it is that Israel gets support from Christians around the world?
This is the time that we need all of Israel's friends banded together, because the other forces that are out there are so strong, and they're not just anti-Israel, anti-Jewish. Many of them are anti-American. So I think we fool ourselves when we say this is just, you know, we have a lot of problems going on with ISIS, with Hezbollah, with Hamas, with all of these factions that want to just take us out. And I think that we need to bond together. I think people that believe in God and have a faith and know, you know, believe in treating each other the right way are those that stay together to build a better world.
Well, kol hakavod, well done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy, for being with us.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you, Chris. Thank you.